great to be here, and it's great to have an opportunity to be able to worship God and praise God again this morning. We're starting a new series this morning. In case you weren't aware, today is Mother's Day. So I thought it would be only fitting if we started a series on different mothers of the Bible and different things we can learn from them. It's customary in some places that on Mother's Day to have all the mothers of the congregation stand. Now I know that's customary, but it doesn't make much sense to me. It would seem to me to be the greater honor to let them stay seated. It's usually they have to get up all the time. So this morning, if you're a mother, go ahead and just stay seated. We'll honor and respect you while you get to rest a little bit. It's a great opportunity for me to be able to speak this morning, because I'm so thankful for my mother, for my grandmother. I'm thankful for my wife, who's a wonderful mother. I'm thankful for all the mothers I've got to know throughout my life, and I'm blessed by their example. It's great to me to be able to study this series. I'm very excited about it. I hope you are as well, because this, I believe, will prove to be a great series. It doesn't seem fitting to start to talk about different women of the Bible, different mothers of the Bible, without beginning with the first, Eve. If you want to go ahead and turn over to Genesis chapter 3 and verse 20, that's going to be our very short text for this morning, where we'll begin and launch off of. Genesis chapter 3 and verse 20. You see, Eve was the mother of Cain, the mother of Abel. She was also the mother of Seth and other sons and daughters. To be short, she was the mother of everyone. She is all of our mothers somewhere down the line. Genesis chapter 3 and verse 20. The man called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all living. This morning, I want us to notice three separate distinct properties in Eve that, as mothers of the congregation, we could emulate, and as fathers, sons, daughters, we can all look up to and appreciate this morning. You see, Mother Eve was created out of a rib. So our first point this morning is going to look at why a rib. Second, we're going to notice that sometimes Mama makes mistakes. And third and finally, where would we be without Eve? First, why a rib? There's a quote that you may have heard before. I think it's fitting, and I think it's appropriate. Matthew Henry is quoted as saying, Eve was not taken out of Adam's head to top him, neither out of his feet to be trampled on by him, but out of his side to be equal with him, and under his arm to be protected by him, and near his heart to be loved by him. You see, it may not have meant a lot to us when we were younger, and we heard that Eve was taken out of Adam and was made from one of his ribs. After all, it seems kind of silly, doesn't it? You made Adam out of Eve, or Adam out of dust of the ground. Why would you make Eve out of the dust of the ground? Well, it's an interesting concept that man is dust once refined, and woman is dust twice refined. He took what he had already made out of mud and refined it once again and made woman. It's a beautiful, beautiful picture. Woman came out of man. It's a part of him. The intimate connection that's felt between man and wife is for that very reason. They're of one flesh. And then as they are joined in marriage, they become that again. One body, one person. While there may be quite a lot of symbolism there and a lot of beauty, and I believe there is, there's so much more to what's found there. You see, this is a special relationship. We're going to talk about husbands for a moment. I know our topic's about mothers, but we're going to talk about husbands. Because the relationship that a husband and wife has because of this, and the man and the woman has because of this, is so special. Because woman is taken out of man's flesh. It is his flesh. In Ephesians chapter 5, verses 28 and 29, I've got it up here on the screen beside me, but I would encourage you also to turn over there in your Bibles. There's an interesting correlation between the relationship between a man and his wife, and between Jesus and the church, Christ and the church. And it's in Ephesians chapter 5 that we see that Paul specifically points out that the entire marriage relationship is an illustration of the relationship that Jesus has with the church. It's to help us understand it. There's more reason for it, but we'll see that in a little bit. The special relationship that between a man and his wife, in the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. Might have been easy for Adam, right? Because in a way it was, literally, his own body, his own rib. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church. You know what the further implication of that, if you continue reading, you see Paul makes it there. What did Christ do for the church? He gave up even his own self. Somebody worth dying for. It's not a mother, if it's not a wife, I don't know who it would be. You see, Eve was a very special woman. A great woman. But often we don't remember Eve as the good mother or Eve as the good wife. Often we remember Eve in a very different light. In fact, I've heard it said before that Eve was the worst wife in the world, and I guess technically that would be true. At that time she was the only wife in the world, so I guess she was the worst and the best at the same time. But it's very easy, both as mothers and as wives, to always look at the negative. I'm speaking not from a personal level, because I'm not a wife or mother, but looking at the personal level of someone who is one. If you're a wife, it's easy to see your failures. It's easy to see all the ways that I'm not as good as so-and-so. It's easy to see all the ways that I could be better, to focus on the negative. You know, there's a lot of things that Eve was first. She was the first woman to walk the face of the earth. She was the first wife. She was the first person that ever gave birth to a child. She was the first woman to not have any parents. She was also the first person to be assaulted by Satan, deceived by him. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 6, after she had been tempted by Satan, we might very well use the word assault. That would be quite the right phrase. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. You know, we don't know a lot about Eve. The Bible doesn't say a lot about her. And this is often what she's remembered for. Surely Eve was causing her husband to sin, as it would have been viewed by many, and still is viewed by many. Surely Eve is bringing her husband and failing herself. Is there anything to be appreciated there? Let's put that on hold for a second. I think we'll answer it in a minute. But second, not just that, a lot of times she's viewed as the worst mom in the world. And this is another thing that's easy to do. It's easy to see your failures as a mother. It's easy to say, I wasn't good enough. I didn't do enough. I'm not good enough. I don't do enough. I'm not as many things as I should be. What about Eve? Were her children unruly? That might be one way to put it. She had one of her sons get angry at the other, and what happened? In Genesis chapter 4 and verse 8, Cain spoke to Abel his brother. When they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Can you imagine what that must have felt like to be Eve? What she must have felt like. Not only had she raised both of these boys of hers, but knowing that if they were still in the garden, maybe things would be different. If she hadn't have listened to that serpent, maybe things would be different. Surely she must be the worst mother in the world. You know, it can be really easy to look back. It can be really easy to look around. But that's not really the beauty of mothers. It's not really the beauty of Eve. What a wonderful woman. You realize that when God made Eve, He made something that was perfect. When God made Eve, can you imagine how beautiful she must have been? Can you imagine how kind, how forgiving, how loving? Can you imagine how Eve must have been? Let's look for a moment Where would we be without Eve? Where would we be without this mother that we've all come from? First, man would be incomplete, would not be good. You remember the creation story? At the end of all the days, when God would look around at His creation, He would say, and He saw it was very good. He saw it was good. He saw it was good. You got to know what creation said, it's very good. But then when chapter 2, when we revisit the creation of man, when God gives us a little more details, after He forms man of the dust of the ground, of the mud of the ground, as a potter was forming clay, detailed. Man was He detailed. After He does that, He sees something that's not good. It's not good for man to be alone. He was incomplete. He wasn't finished. Man needed something. It's in Genesis chapter 2 and verse 18, the Lord said, it's not good that the man should be alone. I will make a helper fit for him. Now some people push those two words together. Helpmeet. But they're two different descriptions of two different things. Not only was it someone who would help, who would aid, but it was someone that would meet the need that was there. Someone that would complete. Where would we be without Eve? Where would we be without mothers, without wives, without women? I can't speak for the rest of the guys here, but I imagine I would be able to fit in a smaller shirt. I'd probably go hungry. I imagine I may not be standing here today. I can't think of how many times I've gotten ready to do something really, really stupid, and I've had a wife or mother, grandmother, and said, it may not be a good idea, maybe you should rethink that. You see, we often look at the negatives, but what about the positives? There's one part to the temptation story that we don't often focus on. Did you notice that when Eve was there, she gave to her husband who was with her? I don't like snakes. If I saw my wife talking to a snake, I might be inclined to say something. In fact, my first inclination might be to run away as fast as I can. I'd like to say I'd stick around and try to fight off the snake, but that wouldn't happen. I would run. I probably would yell back over my shoulder that she might run too, but that's my first inclination. Maybe that's what happened with Adam. Maybe he decided he'd just stay away. But Adam was there. He should have been there for his wife, more than just physically. He shouldn't have just been present. Let's fast forward to the other thing we talked about a moment ago. Eve, the mother of Cain and Abel. The sons, the brothers that killed each other. That Cain killed Abel. Where was Adam? Let's go a step further. Is there anything she could have done? After all, were people created with free will? What can we ultimately do to affect the judgment of another? Let's not dwell on this for too long. Where would man be without Eve? He would be incomplete. But more than that, man would not be alive. Let's just take the physical and move that right up front. Eve was the mother of all living. If there was no Eve, there would be nobody besides Adam. There would have been no Cain, Abel, there would have been no Seth, there would have been no other sons and daughter. There would be no Jacob Cecil. There would be no anyone sitting in here. We kind of need Eve. But let's go a step further, because I don't believe he's here talking about just physical life. You see, woman is much more than just something to produce. We wouldn't have spiritual life without Eve. When God was dealing with the sin in the garden, He didn't just deal with Eve. He also dealt with the serpent. He also dealt with man. And if you'll notice, man seems to get the bigger part of it there. Notice the amount of words that's used for each of them. Well, when he's talking to Satan, when he's talking to the serpent, he says, I will put enmity. This is not Romans 12, verse 1. This is Genesis chapter 3. I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. You see, without Eve, there would have been no seed promise. It was out of woman's seed line that eventually the Christ would come. Genesis chapter 3:15. The first time the gospel is preached and alluded to. That out of the line of Eve would come one who would bring life. I don't think it's any coincidence that after this, Adam says, and calls his wife's name Eve, the mother of all living. She would bring life. It's when Cain is born that Eve seems to think that from Cain is going to come this life. That's what she seems to assume. We don't know that for certain, but because of how she named him, that's what we assume. That perhaps she thinks, this is going to bring the life. It would come a little further down the road. Where would we be without Eve? We'd be hopelessly lost. You see, if Eve had never been created, it would have only been a matter of time before the serpent came and talked to Adam. It would have been only a matter of time before sinful man, with all are unrighteous, would have tasted that forbidden fruit himself. I want to leave you with a question this morning. First, as we're reflecting on this day, honoring our mothers, our grandmothers, the mothers among us, where would you be without your mother? I know sometimes it's easy, both as mothers and as children, to view the imperfections, to see the mistakes. We tend to put mothers on so high of a pedestal because of how great and amazing they are that it just seems like they should never make mistakes. But where would you be? Go a step further. Let's look at our topic for this morning. Where would you be without Eve? This morning, because of Eve and many great mothers like her, because of a line of good people that took care of us, provided for us, nurtured us, that gave us life, there was someone else who was born who could give life. Jesus of Nazareth walked this earth. Jesus of Nazareth decided to take our imperfections and to wipe them away. To take our slate full of evil, of wrong, things that separate us from God, our Father, and to wipe it clean. Replacing it with His own good works, His completed goodness, to give us a way to reconnect. If you're here this morning and you haven't reconnected to God, I want to urge you, to encourage you, to do what would make your Heavenly Father happy. To do what would make your mother happy. To do what would make all those who have given themselves for us happy. To die. To spiritually die. To the old man of sin. Allowing yourself to live new. Allowing yourself to be a new person in Jesus. And if you've done that, don't forget that work. Don't forget that labor of love that so many have gone before us. Don't forget what Jesus has done for you. Live daily as a sacrifice for that. Live daily to honor those who have given so much for us. If you're subject to the invitation this morning, won't you come together and stand?